Good morning, students. Today I'm going to discuss the two major aspects of the immune system, the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. Their collaborations with each other, their functions on a very gross overall view, as well as their differences. Let's start with the gross function of the immune system. It's to provide limited protection and defense against the invasion of the microorganisms and the various pathogens. Now, when the body first time recognizes the invasion of a particular pathogen, it will show some immune response to combat or to address to the situation. But if the immune system is not elicited, it is not activated to show this response when there's a sufficient need, then certain diseases or infections will manifest. On the other hand, when there is no potential threat, or when after the crisis is over, the immune system or the immune response is not turned off, then it will lead to the development of certain problems such as autoimmune diseases and allergic problems. Here we are going to start with the innate immune system and adaptive immune system. So if I tell you what is innate immune system, it would be the system that we are born with. We are born with the innate immune system. The response is very rapid. Within the few seconds of the invasions by the pathogens and the microorganisms, it has got two components, the cellular components and the molecular components. The cellular components includes the macrophage, neutrophil, dendritic cell, eosinophil, mast cell, basophil, and the natural killer cells, NK cells. The molecular components are the effector response. They are the cytokines, the chemokines, the complement proteins. They are the innate immune response molecule. Moreover, if I tell you what is adaptive immune response, that is the response that we will develop throughout our lifetime. Whenever we encounter any pathogen, whenever we encounter any microorganism throughout our lifetime, we develop this adaptive immune response, though it is slow, but it is highly specific. Innate immune system is very rapid. We are born with that. We inherit that, and it can be passed on to the offsprings. But adaptive immune response cannot be passed on to the offspring, so it cannot be inherited. But it is, at the same time, it is very slow, but it is very specific. It can discriminate the different microorganisms. So let's see what it is made up of. It is made up of the cellular component, the B cells and the T cells, and the molecular components are essentially the antibodies as well as the cytokine. So before going into the details of this comparison, I would like to share this physical and the physiological barrier. What is it? The basic part, the structure of the immune system is made up of three immunological defense mechanism. So first defense mechanism is the physical or anatomical and physiological barrier. Below that is the innate immune barrier. After that is the adaptive immune barrier mechanism. So when each of this barrier system is breached or it is invaded, then the next barrier system or the next immune system line of defense mechanism will come into action. So the physical or anatomic physiological barrier system, what it is made up of, the skin being the most important. It is the epithelial cells of the skin. It is forming some tight junctions. It is not allowing the microorganisms to enter. It is providing a physical barrier as well as a chemical barrier. It is secreting some anti-microorganism proteins, as well as it has got some immune cells, the skin. The mucous membrane that is lining the various organs like the respiratory tract, the GI tract, the reproductive system, they are also very important chemical barriers or the physiological barriers. Even the gastric juice or the hydrochloric acid in the GI tract. The ciliated epithelial cells, which are continuously beating to remove the mucus from this respiratory tract or this gastrointestinal tract, reproductive tract, is essentially another very important part of this barrier system. Last but not the least is the body temperature and the pH. So when we are talking about this innate immunity. This is just after this physiological barrier. When this physiological or physical barrier has been invaded by some pathogens, then only the innate immune system or innate immune mechanisms will come into play. It consists of neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, macrophages, mast cells, dendritic cells, and natural killer cells. So when both this this barrier system as well as this innate immunity mechanism and the barrier system, they are both invaded, breached, then the adaptive immunity will come into play. It consists of cytotoxic T cell, it consists of helper T cell, the knife B cells, and the plasma B cells. Function of the innate immunity. As I told you that we are born with this immunity. This is going to provide a very rapid response. Within few seconds of the invasion of the pathogen, the innate immunity gets activated. So first, what the innate immunity does, it recognizes the pathogen, though it is a non-specific immunity, but all the immune cells of this innate immunity, they do have some receptors which can recognize the pathogen but cannot discriminate those. They engulf and destroy the pathogens. Third is they secrete certain substances which are chemical in nature like cytokines, which sets an alarm to the other immune cells to fight the pathogens. And last but not the least, the coordination, that is the most important part of this innate immune system with the adaptive immune component. Now, we will see that this is the innate immune system that gets activated rapidly. It's a non-specific system, but it has a very strong signal or collaboration to the adaptive immune system. So the macrophage, the dendritic cells, they engulf the pathogen. They secrete the cytokines to set an alarm mechanism to the surrounding cells. It's just a call out help. Apart from that, when they are working like an antigen presenting cell, they function in activating the adaptive immunity. And the adaptive immunity starts after days or weeks of invasion of the pathogen. So let's see what are the phases of adaptive immune response, why so much delayed response is there in case of adaptive immune response. So when this B cells and the T cells, which are the cellular components, which are the drivers of this adaptive immune response, they are recognizing the pathogens which are presented to them by the altered body cell or by the macrophages, presenting their antigen on their surface. The macrophage, after engulfing them, they never destroy like the neutrophil. They cut it down into small pieces and display on their surface so that they can activate the other immune cells, which are essentially the T cells. The B cells and the T cells, when they get activated, they recognize the antigen. There is a series of activation, but before the activation, when they recognize the antigen, either displayed on the surface of the altered body cell or on the surface of the macrophage immune cells, so they will go for clonal expansion, then clonal activation, and finally the effector response. So first is the recognition, then clonal selection, because there will be a lot of T cells with different receptors which are specific for a specific antigen. So before clonal selection, there is clonal expansion, there's a clonal selection, followed by clonal expansion, then activation, as well as effector response. When if it is a B cell, a lot of antibodies will be produced, and when the T cells are activated, there are two types of T cells, helper T cells and cytotoxic T. So each has its own specific function. So when cytotoxic T cell is activated, it's going to destroy the pathogen, right, with the help by producing certain hydrogen peroxides or certain chemicals. So at the end, when there's going to be a decline phase, there's going to be the production of the memory cells, which are long lasting. So whenever there is a invasion for the second time, this delayed response will not be there.